A black girl calls 911 and says, "My stepfather locked me in the bathroom." What the police discovered horrified them. Subscribe and comment where you're watching us from. The small house at the end of the street was nothing more than a crumbling shell, its faded blue paint peeling away to reveal the weathered wood beneath. Weeds choked the narrow yard, and the broken front steps sagged under years of neglect. To the outside world, it was just another forgotten home in a struggling neighborhood, but for 8-year-old Lily, it was a place of silent torment. Lily lived here with her mother, Alice, and her stepfather, Brad. Brad had been a part of her life for as long as she could remember, but he never saw her as his daughter. His disdain for her ran deeper than simple indifference. Brad hated Lily, and he made no effort to hide it. The reason was painfully clear to anyone who cared to look. Lily was black, the daughter of a man Alice rarely spoke about. Brad, with his pale skin and sharp, cruel tongue, viewed Lily as an unwelcome stain on his household, and he treated her as such. Her days were filled with endless chores: scrubbing the floors, washing dishes, cleaning windows, tasks that seemed endless in a house that never felt clean. Brad would stand over her, barking orders, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're slower than molasses, girl. Can't even do a simple thing right." If she tried to stand up for herself, his anger would escalate, his voice rising to a shout, his hand raised in warning. Lily's mother was no protector. Alice worked long hours at 2 different jobs, leaving early in the morning and coming home late at night. When she was home, she avoided conflict, retreating into silence whenever Brad's temper flared. She told herself that keeping the peace was the best thing she could do for Lily. But deep down, she knew she was failing her daughter. Dinner was another reminder of her place in the house. Brad would heap food onto his plate and Alice's, leaving Lily with the scraps. Some nights she would go to bed with her stomach growling, wondering what it would feel like to have a full meal. Her small frame grew thinner, her eyes darker, and her movements slower. She didn't complain. Complaining only made things worse. The worst punishments came when Brad was in one of his darker moods. On those nights, he would lock Lily in the bathroom. The small, windowless space felt like a prison. She would sit on the cold, tile floor, knees drawn to her chest, and count the tiles on the wall to pass the time. 36 tiles in total. She had counted them so many times she could see them in her mind, even with her eyes closed. It was during one of these nights that the pain in her stomach became unbearable. Her belly, already swollen from weeks of poor nutrition, felt like it was on fire. She tried to ignore it, tried to distract herself by humming a tune her mother used to sing to her. But the pain didn't go away. It only grew worse, radiating through her small body until she could barely breathe. She thought about screaming, but Brad had warned her about making noise. "You'll stay in there all night if you don't shut your mouth," he had said, his voice cold and final. So she stayed quiet, tears streaming down her face, clutching her stomach as the hours dragged on. When she could bear it no longer, she remembered the old cell phone her mother had tossed into a drawer months ago. Brad had forgotten to take it out of the bathroom after using it to look up something earlier in the day. Lily crawled to the cabinet and opened the drawer. Her hands shook as she pulled out the phone, the screen cracked but still working. She stared at it for a long moment, debating whether to call. Brad would be furious if he found out, but the pain in her stomach reminded her that she might not make it through the night if she didn't do something. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, she dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency?" The voice on the other end was calm and steady. Lily hesitated. Her voice was barely a whisper when she finally spoke. "He locked me in the bathroom," she said, tears choking her words, "and my stomach hurts. It hurts so bad." The dispatcher's tone softened. "Sweetheart, are you alone right now?" "Yes," Lily whispered. "He's gone. Please help me." The dispatcher kept Lily on the line, asking her questions to keep her talking while sending help to her location. Lily's heart raced as she heard the sound of approaching sirens. Relief and fear mingled in her chest. She wanted to be saved, but she was terrified of what would happen when Brad found out. When the police arrived, they found the house in darkness. The front door was unlocked, and the officers entered cautiously, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The house smelled of mildew and stale cigarettes. It didn't take long for them to find the bathroom door, locked from the outside. "Lily, are you in there?" one of the officers called out. Her voice was faint. "Yes." The lock clicked open, and the door swung wide to reveal a small, frail girl sitting on the floor, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her dark eyes were wide with fear, her face pale and damp with sweat. The officers took in her swollen belly and trembling frame with a mixture of concern and outrage. "It's okay," one of them said softly. "You're safe now." But Lily didn't feel safe, not yet. She flinched when they reached for her body conditioned to expect rough treatment. It wasn't until they carried her out of the house, into the cool night air, that she began to believe she might finally be free. They drove her to the hospital, lights flashing but no sirens. The officer in the passenger seat turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "We're going to take care of you, Lily," he said. "You're not alone anymore." Lily stared out the window, the streets blurring past. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that this nightmare was finally over. But deep down, a part of her wondered if it ever really could be. Lily sat in the hospital bed, the stark white sheets tucked neatly around her small frame. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow, making her dark skin appear even paler. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of danger. The steady beeping of machines was foreign and unsettling, but at least it wasn't Brad's voice, and that was something. Doctors moved in and out of the room, their faces a mix of concern and determination. They examined her swollen belly, checked her vitals, and whispered among themselves in hushed tones. The words they used, malnutrition, infection, chronic neglect, were too big for Lily to fully understand, but she could feel their weight. Every time they looked at her, their eyes seemed to carry a question they were too polite to ask. How did it get this bad? Her mother arrived late that evening. Alice rushed into the room, her purse clutched tightly in one hand, her expression a mix of worry and something Lily couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe, or fear. She didn't meet Lily's eyes at first, instead focusing on the doctor who was briefing her on the situation. "She's severely malnourished," the doctor said, his voice calm but firm. "Her swollen abdomen is a result of an infection that's gone untreated for too long. We'll need to run additional tests to determine the extent of the damage." Alice nodded, wringing her hands. I didn't know it was this bad. She never said anything." The doctor's gaze hardened. "She's 8 years old. It's your job to notice." Lily watched the exchange from her bed, her heart sinking. She wanted to call out to her mother, to ask her to sit by her side and hold her hand, but Alice didn't move closer. When she finally looked at Lily, her face was tight, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Why didn't you tell me you were feeling sick?" Alice asked, her tone sharper than it should have been. Lily didn't answer. What could she say? That Brad never let her speak unless spoken to? That the last time she'd complained about being hungry, he'd locked her in the bathroom for an entire day? Instead, she stared at the blanket covering her legs, hoping her silence would be enough. Alice stayed for less than an hour. She murmured something about needing to go back to work, kissed Lily on the forehead in a way that felt more like an afterthought, and left. Lily watched her go, the sound of her heels clicking against the tile floor fading into the distance. She was alone again. The next morning, 2 women from Child Protective Services arrived. They introduced themselves with kind smiles and soft voices, but Lily couldn't help shrinking away from them. They asked her questions about her home, about Brad, about her mother, and though she answered as best she could, she felt like she was being tested. She didn't want to fail. By the end of the interview, the decision had been made. Lily would not be going home. Not yet, at least. She would be placed in a temporary shelter until the situation could be fully investigated. The words temporary shelter didn't mean much to her, but the idea of not having to go back to Brad's house filled her with a cautious sense of relief. The shelter was nothing like the house she had left behind. It was bigger, cleaner, and filled with other children. But it wasn't home. The walls were painted in pastel colors meant to feel cheerful, but to Lily they seemed almost mocking. The other kids, most of whom had been there for weeks or months, eyed her with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. At first, Lily tried to keep to herself. She ate alone, her head down, her movements timid, but her swollen belly and thin frame made her stand out, and it wasn't long before the whispers started. "Why does she look like that?" a boy asked one day, loud enough for Lily to hear. "Maybe she ate too much," a girl replied, giggling. Like a balloon. Lily's cheeks burned, but she didn't say anything. She had learned long ago that speaking up only made things worse. She focused on her plate, pushing the food around with her fork, trying to make it look like she had eaten more than she had. The staff at the shelter noticed her reluctance to eat and tried to encourage her. "You need to build your strength," one of them said gently, placing a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of her. But the sight of so much food all at once was overwhelming. Lily nibbled at the edges of the toast, but she couldn't bring herself to eat more. Her nights were no easier. The shelter had rules about keeping bedroom doors closed for privacy, but the sound of the door clicking shut made Lily's heart race. She begged the staff to leave it open, just a little, and eventually they agreed. Even then, she struggled to sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled voice in the hallway made her flinch. She would lie awake for hours, clutching the small stuffed bear the staff had given her, whispering to herself, "He's not here. He can't get me." It was during one of these sleepless nights that Lily met Mary. Mary was a new social worker assigned to Lily's case. She was young, with kind eyes and a voice that reminded Lily of the calm tone the dispatcher had used when she called 911. Mary sat with Lily on the edge of her bed, talking to her about everything and nothing. "I hear you like to draw," Mary said one evening, holding out a set of crayons and a sketch pad. Lily hesitated. She hadn't drawn anything since leaving Brad's house. Drawing had always been her way of escaping, but now it felt too raw, too personal. Still, something about Mary's gentle persistence made her take the sketch pad. Her first drawing was of a door. It was simple, just a rectangle with a doorknob, but it was unmistakably the bathroom door from Brad's house. Mary didn't say anything when she saw it. She just nodded and encouraged Lily to keep going. Over the next few days, Lily's drawings became more detailed. She drew the tiles on the bathroom wall, the crack in the floor where the grout had worn away, the small window that let in just enough light to see by. But she also started to add other elements. Flowers blooming in the corner, a sunbeam streaming through the window. Her drawings became a way for her to process what she had been through, to take control of the story in her own way. Mary used the drawings to build a case for Lily. She took photos of them, along with medical records and testimonies from the shelter staff, to present to the court. But the process was slow, and the looming possibility of being sent back to Brad's house weighed heavily on Lily's mind. One afternoon, as Mary was gathering her things to leave, Lily finally asked the question that had been gnawing at her. "Do you think they'll make me go back?" Mary crouched down to her level, meeting her eyes. "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen," she said. "But I need you to be brave, Lily. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, though the fear in her heart remained. She wasn't sure if bravery was something she had inside her, but for now, she would try. It was the only thing she could do. The courthouse loomed tall and foreboding, its gray facade blending into the dreary autumn sky. Lily sat on a bench in the hallway outside the courtroom, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her small frame seemed to shrink under the weight of the moment. She was surrounded by people, lawyers, social workers, and strangers in suits who walked briskly past, but she had never felt so alone. Mary knelt beside her, gently placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. "It's okay to be nervous," she said softly. "This is a big day, but remember, you've got so many people on your side." Lily nodded, though her stomach churned. The thought of facing Brad, or worse, being sent back to live with him, made her feel like she might be sick. She clutched her stuffed bear tightly, its worn fabric a small comfort in a sea of uncertainty. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Brad sat at the defendant's table, his posture rigid, his jaw set in defiance. He was clean-shaven and dressed in a crisp shirt, a stark contrast to the man Lily had known. It was clear he was trying to present himself as a reformed figure, but his sharp gaze and clenched fists betrayed his true nature. Alice sat behind him, her eyes darting nervously around the room. She avoided looking at Lily, as if acknowledging her daughter would shatter the fragile illusion she had constructed around Brad. Lily noticed the way Alice's hands trembled as she clutched her purse, and a pang of sadness shot through her. She wanted her mother to stand up for her, to choose her over Brad, but deep down, she knew that wasn't going to happen. Mary and her legal team had prepared for this moment. They presented a series of damning evidence, medical records documenting Lily's malnutrition and untreated infection, testimony from the shelter staff about her emotional and physical state when she arrived, and even the drawings Lily had made. Each piece painted a chilling picture of neglect and abuse. "Your Honor," Mary's lawyer began, her voice steady and measured, "Lily James has endured unimaginable hardship at the hands of her stepfather, Brad Peterson. She was denied basic necessities, food, medical care, and safety. Returning her to that environment would not only be irresponsible, but potentially life-threatening." Brad's lawyer rose to counter. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges that mistakes were made in the past, but he has taken significant steps to turn his life around. He has completed anger management courses, sought counseling, and expressed a genuine desire to provide a stable home for Lily. He deserves a chance to prove he can be a better parent." The words made Lily's skin crawl. She wanted to shout that it was all a lie, that Brad hadn't changed at all, but she remained silent, her hands gripping her bear so tightly her knuckles turned white. The judge, a stern-looking man with a thick mustache, listened intently, his expression unreadable. "Before we proceed further, I would like to hear from the child," he said finally, his gaze shifting to Lily. "Lily, would you like to speak?" Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She felt Mary's reassuring hand on her back as she rose to her feet. Her legs felt like jelly as she walked to the front of the courtroom, her bear clutched tightly in her arms. She stood behind the microphone, her small voice trembling as she began to speak. "I don't want to go back," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "Can you tell us why?" the judge asked gently. Lily hesitated, glancing at Mary, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, she continued. He hurt me. He locked me in the bathroom when I made him mad. I was hungry all the time, and I was scared." Her voice broke, but she pressed on. "I don't think he cares about me. I don't think he ever did." There was a heavy silence in the courtroom as her words hung in the air. Even Brad's lawyer seemed momentarily taken aback. Alice shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face pale. The judge nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Lily. You've been very brave." As she returned to her seat beside Mary, Lily felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. She had said what she needed to say, but she couldn't shake the fear that it might not be enough. The proceedings continued, each side making their final arguments. Brad's lawyer painted him as a flawed but repentant man, someone who deserved a second chance. Mary's team argued that Lily's safety and well-being had to come first, emphasizing the progress she had made since leaving Brad's house. After what felt like an eternity, the judge called for a recess to deliberate. Lily and Mary stepped outside into the chilly afternoon air, the tension palpable. "You did amazing," Mary said, kneeling to meet Lily's eyes. "No matter what happens, I'm so proud of you." Lily nodded, but her mind was racing. What if it wasn't enough? What if the judge believed Brad's lies? She couldn't bear the thought of going back to that house, to the cold bathroom and the locked door. When they returned to the courtroom, the judge's expression was serious, his voice firm as he delivered his verdict. "After careful consideration of the evidence presented, I find that it is not in Lily James's best interest to return to the custody of Brad Peterson. Effective immediately, Mr. Peterson's parental rights are terminated." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She barely heard the rest of the judge's words as a wave of relief washed over her. It was over. She was safe. As they left the courthouse, Mary held Lily's hand tightly. "You're free now," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "No one can hurt you anymore." But Lily knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The memories of Brad's cruelty and the fear she had lived with for so long wouldn't disappear overnight. Still, for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could start to heal. That evening, back at the shelter, Lily sat at a table with her sketch pad. She picked up a crayon and began to draw. This time, it wasn't a locked door or a dark room. It was a small house with an open window, sunlight streaming in, and flowers blooming in the yard. It wasn't her reality yet, but it was something to strive for. She looked at Mary, who was sitting nearby, and gave her a small smile. "Do you think I'll ever have a home like this?" she asked, holding up the drawing. Mary's eyes softened. "I think you will, Lily. You deserve it." And for the first time, Lily believed her. The morning air was crisp as Lily stepped out of the car, her feet crunching against the gravel driveway. In front of her stood a modest two-story house, its pale yellow siding gleaming in the soft sunlight. A garden filled with blooming flowers bordered the path to the front door, and the faint sound of wind chimes carried through the breeze. It felt warm, inviting, a stark contrast to the cold, gray walls of the shelter she had called home for the past few months. "This is it," Mary said with a gentle smile, kneeling beside Lily to meet her eye level. "Your new foster home." Lily nodded, clutching her stuffed bear tightly. She wasn't sure what to feel. Excitement, fear, hope. It all swirled inside her, making her chest feel tight. The couple standing by the door waved to her, their smiles wide and welcoming. They were nothing like Brad and Alice. The woman, Grace, had kind eyes and a soft voice. Her husband, Tom, was tall with a friendly grin that reminded Lily of the kind policeman who had rescued her months ago. As they approached, Grace crouched down and extended her hand. "Hi, Lily. We're so happy you're here." Lily hesitated for a moment before shaking her hand. Grace's touch was gentle, and her smile didn't waver. Tom stepped forward next, his voice warm. "We've got a room all ready for you. Would you like to see it?" Lily nodded again, her voice caught in her throat. She followed them inside, Mary trailing behind her. The house smelled like fresh-baked cookies and pine, and the living room was filled with soft furniture and shelves stacked with books and family photos. It was a world away from anything she had ever known. Her new room was upstairs, painted a soft lavender with a big window overlooking the garden. A small bed with a quilted blanket sat in the corner, and next to it was a desk with colored pencils and sketchbooks neatly arranged. On the windowsill sat a row of potted plants, their leaves vibrant and full of life. "This is your space," Grace said, standing in the doorway. "You can decorate it however you like." Lily stepped into the room, running her fingers over the smooth wood of the desk. She didn't know what to say. It felt too good to be true. Over the next few weeks, Lily began to adjust to her new life. Grace and Tom were patient, giving her space to open up at her own pace. At first, Lily stayed quiet, speaking only when spoken to. She avoided making eye contact and flinched at sudden movements, but Grace and Tom never raised their voices, never pushed her to talk before she was ready. One morning, as Lily sat at the kitchen table sketching in her notebook, Grace placed a plate of pancakes in front of her. They were warm, golden, and topped with a mountain of whipped cream and strawberries. "I thought you might like these," Grace said, sitting across from her. Lily hesitated, her hand hovering over the fork. She wasn't used to being served food like this, to having someone care about what she wanted. Slowly, she took a bite. The sweetness of the strawberries and the fluffiness of the pancakes made her eyes widen. "They're really good," she said softly. Grace smiled, her eyes lighting up. "I'm glad you like them." It was a small moment, but it was the first time Lily felt like she belonged. School was another hurdle. Lily was placed in a new classroom where everything felt unfamiliar. The other kids were friendly enough, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. During lunch, she sat alone, her head down as she picked at her food. But things began to change when Lily's teacher, Mrs. Thompson, noticed her love for art. One day, she asked Lily to stay after class. "I've been watching you draw during free time," Mrs. Thompson said. "You've got real talent." Lily looked up, surprised. "Really?" "Absolutely," Mrs. Thompson said, her smile warm. "How would you feel about joining the art club? I think you'd love it." Lily hesitated, but Mrs. Thompson's encouragement gave her the courage to say yes. The following week, she attended her first art club meeting. The other kids welcomed her, complimenting her sketches and inviting her to work on group projects. For the first time, Lily felt like she was part of something. As the seasons changed, so did Lily. She grew more comfortable in her new home, her laughter becoming more frequent and her smiles less guarded. Grace and Tom encouraged her to pursue her passions, taking her to art museums and signing her up for weekend workshops. They celebrated her small victories, like her first A on a school project and the day she scored a goal in a soccer game. But there were still moments of doubt. One evening, as Lily worked on a painting in her room, she paused and stared at the canvas. It was a landscape of a sunny meadow, but she couldn't bring herself to finish it. The memories of Brad's house, of the bathroom, and the locked door still lingered in the back of her mind. Grace found her sitting on the floor, her knees drawn to her chest. "What's wrong, sweetie?" she asked, sitting beside her. Lily hesitated before speaking. "What if I can't forget?" she whispered. "What if it never goes away?" Grace placed a comforting arm around her shoulders. "Some things stay with us, Lily," she said gently, "but they don't have to control us. You've already come so far, and we'll be here for you every step of the way." Lily nodded, leaning into Grace's embrace. It wasn't a solution, but it was enough for now. Months turned into a year, and Lily continued to thrive. She won first place in an art competition at school, her painting of a rainbow over a stormy sky earning her a standing ovation. She made close friends, joined a book club, and even began speaking at school assemblies about resilience and hope. One day, as she and Grace were baking cookies, the doorbell rang. Grace answered it and returned with an envelope addressed to Lily. It was from her mother. Lily sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter was short, filled with apologies and a plea to reconnect. Lily read it silently, her emotions a mix of hope and hesitation. "What do you think?" Grace asked gently. "I don't know," Lily said honestly. "I think I want to write back, but I don't think I'm ready to see her." "That's okay," Grace said. "Take your time. You're the one in control now." Lily wrote the letter that evening, pouring her heart onto the page. She told her mother about her new home, her art, and the people who had helped her heal. She didn't ask for anything, but she left the door open for a future connection. As she sealed the envelope, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but she finally felt free to move forward. Later that night, as she sat on the porch swing with Grace and Tom, watching the stars twinkle above, Lily felt a sense of peace she had never known. The storm that had once consumed her life was finally over, and in its place a rainbow stretched across the horizon, a promise of brighter days ahead. Thank you for watching this story to the end. Subscribe to the channel to not miss new videos, share this video with your friends, and write in the comments what you think about the story. And don't forget to watch other videos on the channel. There's a lot of interesting stuff waiting for you there. See you in the next episodes.